Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison. You want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, I lived in a place called Whitewood, Virginia. It's near Keene Mountain, the school that I went to when I was living there. It's called Twin Valley. You had to drive by Keene Mountain. So anybody from Virginia has heard of Keene Mountain Prison. It's a pretty big prison. I actually had a guy who married my cousin that worked there as a guard, and he told me a story that made me think he was a douchebag. He told me that he was transporting a prisoner to the hospital, and the guy said, "Boss, I'm telling you, I feel like I've got meningitis. I had it when I was a kid." And he kept telling us how he told him to shut up. Couldn't be bothered with him because he was hungover that day or something. And how the guy kept saying, "I'm telling you, boss, it's meningitis." And I thought the story was going to have some alternative ending, but he ultimately said, "Turns out he was right. He died. He had meningitis." And I thought, you douche. And that was when I was on bond, and everybody knew I was going to go to prison. And he's telling that story to me, knowing that. Either he's too stupid to, think of that, or, he's just being a prick, which both possibilities are very possible. Anyway, still don't like him. He's got the upper body of a pretty developed girl. He isn't built like a man's man. But anyway, got to get those shots in. Don't like him. There's an issue at a family reunion, which I'll bring up real quick. It's pissed me off. It's why I don't go to those things anymore. Kind of an outcast a little bit among some because of my past. Certain things and everything else like that. The majority of my family, it was like, everybody forgets you when you're in prison. But I was good on bond for 2 years. I was clean. I was right. Went to family. It wasn't like I went in, everybody's like, "Yeah, he's a piece of crap. Hope he gets out and does better." I was out for 2 years and I did perfect. Got forgotten about. And I was trying to talk with cousins. And two other cousins and him. And as I'm trying to talk, he keeps standing in front of me, like getting his back. So then I'm standing behind him to box me out of the conversation. I was mature. I shouldn't have been, but I was. And, since then, regret not saying or doing something about it. But anyways, think of him as a douche because of that. But I lived with my aunt during the time I was there, and my cousin and my uncle. I'd pretty much gotten in trouble in Roanoke at every school that I could have gone to. The first school that I was going to, basically a kid who I had sold to got caught and told. And I was wanted for questioning by the drug task force. The people who wear the suits, not the regular uniform cops, which you knew it was in trouble. So got out of town to a rehab for that, to avoid that. And ended up going to a Catholic school for 2 weeks after that. I went in twacked out. I figured they'd think, "Oh, he's just a twitchy kid." Well, they did for about 2 weeks, and they kind of caught on to that. I was kind of told not to come back there, too. So I even went to a school in another county over for like a few days. It was alternative school. Awful. But I ended up in this place called Twin Valley. And little country town. I was used to a school that had like 1,400 people, like 300, 400 people a grade. This school had like 250 people in the entire high school. It was country as could be. And I was real dark complected, and like I could be one of like 5 different nationalities, just looking at how my face is structured. And I was really dark, really tan. And I show up at school and I get approached by these 4 country guys that are pretty big. And they're like, "What are you?" I'm like, "What? What nationality are you?" I'm like, "I'm white." And I'm like, I'm Chase's cousin. They're like, "Chase who?" And I'm like, I say his last name. They're like, oh, okay. But it was weird getting approached like that. I felt like I was getting ready to get lynched out of this. It was a weird experience with that. Now, of course, found out who did what and who was into what, everything else. And I lived clean, lived really good, played football. Stayed down there for a couple of years, but second year, I believe it was in the 11th grade, I ended up getting back hooked into it. And like I've said before, the adults of my generation that I've encountered pretty much failed the kids involved. And this particular person, who was a very good friend of mine, his mom ran a motel with her boyfriend. And we'd go up there, and sometimes I'd bring stuff back from Roanoke. And other times they'd sell us stuff. The first time I tried speed was in that hotel at 16 years old, in which his mom sold it to us. And shortly after that, I think, the effects of that made it obvious that something was a little bit off. My aunt figured it out, tested me, kicked me out. But I didn't want to quit high school. I didn't want to drop out. I liked school. I was good at school, especially English. I was the only person to get a perfect score, 600 on the SOL, which, people talk right like they talk down there. So they'll say tar fire down in the holler, and that means like there's a tire fire down in the cul-de-sac. But they write like they talk, a lot of the people. And I'd write my paper when the teacher was out taking her smoke break, and I'd write it in 5 minutes, real quick. And everybody else, I remember the first few times people laughed because they're like, "You're gonna fail." I stayed up with my mom doing this, and we'd get our papers back, and they'd get like a C plus, and I'd have a perfect 100 on it, and they'd get pissed because they're like, "You wrote that in 5 minutes. I stayed up with my mom and wrote that." But writing was something, just I could do. I could VS. I knew it's almost like a mathematical structure, descriptive word, everything. I knew what they were looking for. It's not as much, like I was writing something incredible. I knew what the teacher looked for. And like I said, people wrote like they talk down there. It's also where I first saw my fiance, Casey. She was a little track star back then. And she was friends with this girl that was friends, that's boyfriend was friends with me. And, I would have loved gone out to her back then, but she was a good girl and I was, a dealer, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. And that's what it was. And I learned there's a big price difference from Roanoke to there. The price difference from Roanoke to Whitewood was the same difference from New York to Roanoke. Everything was more expensive. So I moved into this hotel, and I'm living there, and I'm going to school, driving to school every day, living in this hotel, same hotel my friend's mom ran, that I bought speed from. And I'm selling. She put me around the back. See, there's a back to this hotel, and it's got a guardrail. It's just a hill down from there, so nobody can see the traffic coming in and out. And I'd drive it back, and her boyfriend would buy stuff off of me. And it was pretty much like the price that it was there compared to Roanoke. The markup was like literally double for blow, and that was what I was dealing with. They didn't have it there. They didn't have anybody steadily bringing that in. It's a little bit of speed, moonshine, stuff like that. But I had these big money dreams, watched too much TV, and I started selling at this hotel. It's how it was, and it was that way for the longest time, and I kept going to school during this whole time. And there were some suspicions and everything else like that, and it was actually really awkward, and I really regret it because my aunt, I loved the time that I had there. It was couple of the happiest years of my life. I just saw them the other day. They're incredible people. My aunt has been with my uncle, her husband, for their entire life, since they were like 15. They're the only people each other have been with in their entire life. And she's never smoked a cigarette or drank alcohol once in her life. She's funny as could be, but she's never done it, never smoked a cigarette, nothing. And she's funny as one of the funniest people, most sarcastic people with idiots that you'll ever see. But during that time, it was a wonderful time. I enjoyed school, everything else, but I wanted to be I was addicted to dealing. Had to be the man, like it was just a mental illness, just like addiction's an illness, and that was a thing. So after I got kicked out and I was living at this hotel, it's crazy because it's a small town, but I never once ran into my cousin, never once ran into her. Except for one time when my tire went flat and I was supposed to be going home. And then I ended up staying overnight around. She's very sweet. I mean, didn't act mean, but she wasn't going to let me live there and do that. That wasn't going to be allowed. And I kept doing this. Had a little network of stuff going. Had extra cash, money to eat. Kept going to school, and it was all going good on the honor roll. Everything else. And one day I end up getting a phone call on the hotel phone, and it's my friend's mom. And she's like, "Listen, we got to switch your rooms right now. Hurry up." And I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "They're getting ready to come." She says, "Whenever they're getting ready to rate a room, they call the hotel and let me know an hour or so in advance. They're getting ready to hit your room. We got to switch you." So I'm like, "Oh, shoot." And gathered everything up and switched the room. And of course, they hit the room and they're looking confused because there's nothing in the room at all. And everything else, and I'm sitting there, like at the toilet for probably 3 hours with everything I've got because I don't want to flush money down the toilet, but I don't want to get caught either, but so I just stood in that limbo, like with bad nerves for that entire time. And ultimately, after that, that's when I left. That's when I said I've got to leave, and I left out of there. Went back to Roanoke, and shortly after that was the time in which I became the driver for the biggest dealer in my city for heroin. And the series of events after that led me to spend most of my 20s in federal prison. Now, in this little country town, I have a ton of little stories. This is a part of my life I haven't spoken about. It was good part of my life. I went back home to Roanoke during the summers and a lot of weekends too, so a lot of stories in between. But this is something I hadn't talked a whole lot about, living down there and everything else. But it's a wild little place, and it's a coal mining town. Now, I don't know if y'all know anything about Tazewell County, but it's a little place in between on the way there. It's being OxyContin capital of the world by Time Magazine 2 years in a row. It's a coal mining town, and they had people that were overriding OxyContin because it was told to the doctors that it wasn't addictive. It was a pseudo addiction. It's not a real addiction. It's all in their head. Turns out they were wrong. Look at Purdue Pharma getting bankrupt, sued, and everything else. As it was in Grundy and Whitewood, at the little gas station that was at the before you went over the mountain to go to the school that everybody'd hang out at and everything else. We got off school, we'd be hanging out there, and some of the coal miners would be getting back from work, everything else. Or when we got done with football practice, that's when they were really getting out, and they'd come and they'd be covered in coal, dirty as could be, and selling them. And they were selling them for, back then, it was like 100 to 120 a pill. There are people that I know down there. There are so many stories that I have of people trading fully paid trucks. One bottle of pills. I mean, 120 of those pills at 100 a piece. I mean, that's $12,000 for a prescription every month. And there are people, they didn't like taking it, and some people went and got it so then they could sell it. And it really hit that place hard. And in terms of the OxyContin epidemic, I've got a lot of stories of sad stuff that happened that I firsthand saw as it was happening. A lot of stories I've got about that I'll tell in the future. I don't know why I hadn't talked about this place. Probably because I had a fun time there and I wished it'd never end, but that's where I met Casey, She was with this douchebag back then named Ross, who was just too cool. And he called me racist name. The first word was sand. The second word was a very not nice word. I was dark. I did get a lot of crap back then because I looked like I was foreign in this little country white town. It's literally all white people. Now there's a pharmacy school there, so it's mixed up, but it's weird because I know I sound country. I'm not country. I'm not, don't go hunting, fish, none of that stuff, I fished a couple times, I enjoyed it, but I'm not country. And on top of that, being dark skinned down there, and they all called me city boy. And then in Roanoke, everybody called me the country dude. And I'm like, well, shoot, if I'm city boy there, country boy here, where do I belong? And that was a big thing too. But whenever I was a dealer, it felt like everybody was my friend. I realize now they weren't my friend. They just liked me because I had stuff, and they were hoping for a discount or cheaper stuff. But more stories to come about this place. This is the second video today. I'm also going to do the workout thing later tonight. See, I told you it wasn't going to slow me down or divert from what I normally do. I'm not going to change anything up. The workout stuff is in addition to everything else. It's mainly for my mom and dad, who are not together, live in separate houses, have for since I was like 15. My dad's having a second knee surgery. My mom's back went out. Some body weight stuff that I'm doing. It's a 4-month thing that I did whenever I broke my foot. 2 months after I broke my foot, and I was able to start doing a little bit again. This is what I did. It starts incredibly, ridiculously, it seems foolishly simple at first, but every 5th day it adds upon itself. And at the end of 4 months, I was doing 1,000 sit-ups a day. I started with 20 the first 4 days, 25 twice a day the next 4 days, and at the end of 4 months is up to 1,000 a day. It's the same as that, and you never soar one day. It slowly builds upon itself. So I'm going to have that one coming out here, probably on shortly after this, but it's not stopping anything. I had somebody like threaten to subscribe if I do workout videos. It's so much easier to post them here for my family to see than to send in messages. I can only send like a 30-second clip at a time in a text message, and it takes forever, and then half the time it fails. On here, it can be seen, and I know a little bit about this stuff. So, if you're interested in doing that with me and with everybody else, you can watch those two and do that with us. Today's day 2. I'm making a playlist of it, and it's going to have a number with which one it is in it. So if you'd like to do that, that's cool. If not, it's okay. Daniel Cormier, I like him and watching UFC commentating, but I think his little other show's dumb, and I just don't watch it. But his other show doesn't make me like him any less. I just don't watch it. So I'm still doing the same thing. It's not taking away from anything. So don't think that. So if you like the video, if you've watched it this far, press the like button. But if not, that is 15 minutes and 38 seconds of your life in which you will never get back. Hope you did, though.